Before we close our eyes at night, most of us lie there scrolling through thoughts, not just our phones. Some thoughts come gently, like memories of a good moment, a kind word, or a small accomplishment. But more often, they're tangled and loud. What we said wrong, what we didn't do, what might happen tomorrow. That's where the mind begins to spiral, and without realizing it, we carry the day's noise into the silence of the night. One of the most important things you can do before bed, something simple yet powerful, is to take a moment to reflect, not ruminate. There's a difference between reflection and rumination. Reflection is soft and honest. It's a look at your day with kindness and curiosity. Rumination, on the other hand, is heavy. It's like getting stuck in a loop where your mind chews on the same painful thought again and again. And it doesn't digest. It just keeps turning. That's where loneliness can grow. In the echo chamber of the unspoken, unprocessed thought. That's why before bed, learning how to guide your mind back toward reflection, rather than letting it drift into rumination, can be one of the most healing things you do for yourself. Think of it this way. Every day we collect stories. Some are loud and obvious, some are subtle and quiet. A conversation that made you smile, a task you didn't finish, an emotion that came up but you ignored it. These stories sit with us, especially when the distractions of the day fade. Before bed, instead of pushing them away or getting lost in them, we can sit with them, just for a little while. Like a friend who stops by to say, "How was your day?" You get to ask that of yourself. Take 5 minutes. Sit or lie down. Close your eyes if you want. Ask yourself, what stood out to me today? Maybe it's something you're proud of. A moment where you were patient or kind. Maybe it's something that didn't go the way you wanted. Don't try to fix it or judge it. Just notice it. Let it be seen even for a moment. That simple act of recognition, of acknowledging your own experience, can feel like a hand on your shoulder. And in that small pause, the mind starts to settle. In practice, this might look like gently scanning your day, moment by moment, not to pick it apart, but to understand how you moved through it. Were you present? Were you hiding? What made your energy rise, and what drained it? These aren't questions with right or wrong answers. They're not homework. They're invitations to meet yourself again, after a long day of being everything for everyone else. And yes, there might be things you wish you'd done differently. That's okay. Reflection is not about denial or sugarcoating. It's about seeing clearly without punishment. If you lost your temper, say, "That happened." If you didn't speak up when you needed to admit it, that's growth. It's not about erasing the mistake. It's about removing the shame around it. When we can name what hurt, what felt off, or what made us proud, we reclaim power over our story. We stop being just passengers in our own lives. Now, someone might ask, but won't thinking before bed keep me awake? The truth is, unprocessed thoughts are the ones that keep us awake. They knock on the door in the middle of the night because we ignored them earlier. When we give them 5 minutes of our presence, they often quiet down. The mind doesn't need everything solved. It just wants to be heard. Loneliness often isn't just about being physically alone. It's about feeling unseen, even by ourselves. So when we practice reflection, we're saying to ourselves, "I see you, I hear you, I care." And that changes the whole internal dialogue. It becomes less about avoiding discomfort and more about learning from it. Less about escaping ourselves, and more about returning to ourselves. In those final moments before sleep, we're closer to our real selves than at any other time of the day. There's nothing to prove, no performance, no pretending, just breath, body, and thought. That's why it matters what we do with that time. That's why it matters what kind of voice we hear before we drift into dreams. If it's a harsh one, if it's filled with judgment, we carry that tone into tomorrow. But if it's a gentle one, a voice of reflection and patience, we sleep not just better, but lighter. And so, the next time you lay your head down, remember this: you don't need to fix the day. You only need to meet it honestly. When you reflect instead of ruminate, the mind doesn't run. It rests. And that, truly, is how peace begins. As night falls and the world begins to quiet down, something powerful happens. We're left with ourselves. There's no noise from the outside, no one asking for our attention, no obligations to fulfill. But for many people, that silence doesn't feel peaceful. It feels uncomfortable. It's in those moments, just before bed, when stillness arrives and we suddenly feel everything we tried to ignore all day. That's why, before sleep, there's something deeply healing in learning how to simply be with yourself. Not as a project to fix, not as a problem to solve, but as a human being who deserves your own attention. All day long we're in motion. We're answering messages, meeting deadlines, filling silence with distractions. It's not that these things are wrong, but the constant movement pulls us outward, It scatters our energy and attention in 100 directions. When night comes, we're physically tired, but mentally and emotionally, we're still spinning. That's why we don't always feel rested, even after a full night's sleep. The body stops, but the mind doesn't. And more than that, the heart doesn't. So before sleep, we need to pause. Not just to slow down, but to reconnect with the one person we tend to overlook most ourselves. When I say reconnect, I don't mean thinking about who you should be. I mean returning to the quiet awareness that's already within you. Beneath all the stories, all the pressure, there is a part of you that has always been calm. It's just buried under layers of noise. And you don't have to do anything dramatic to find it. You just have to sit still long enough to feel it. That's why I invite you to try something small. Just before bed, take a few minutes to be still. No goals, no expectations. Just you, your breath, and the present moment. At first, it might feel unfamiliar. You might notice discomfort rising, restlessness, worry, maybe even sadness. That's okay. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're being honest. When we remove distractions, we come face to face with what we've been avoiding. But instead of pushing it away, you can simply notice it. You can say, yes, this is here right now. And then breathe. Not to control the feeling, but to allow space for it. In that space, something incredible happens. The emotion may not vanish, but it softens. Because it's finally being acknowledged. The goal isn't to feel good right away. It's to be real with yourself. To feel grounded again in your own presence. In that stillness, you start to remember who you are beneath all the noise. You're not just your job, your relationships, your past mistakes, or your future plans. You're someone worthy of care, just as you are. And the more you come back to that place, the less lonely you start to feel. Because you're no longer abandoning yourself in the moments that matter most. You don't need fancy tools or special techniques. Just sit. Or lie down. Place a hand on your chest, or on your belly if that helps you feel connected to your breath. Inhale slowly, hold for a second, and exhale gently. Do that a few times, not to force relaxation, but to remind yourself that you are here. And that's enough. You can let go of the day. You can set it down, not because it's finished, but because your rest matters too. Some nights, you might find silence peaceful. Other nights, it might feel heavy. But if you stay with yourself, if you return to your breath and your body, you'll realize you don't have to escape your own presence. You can trust it. You can belong to it. That's a powerful shift. Because loneliness, at its core, isn't always about the absence of others. Often, it's about the absence of connection to ourselves. We think we're alone because no one understands us. But sometimes, we just haven't listened deeply enough to understand ourselves. And this kind of listening, this gentle self-connection, builds something inside you. It creates a steady place you can return to, even when life feels chaotic. It becomes your anchor. And night after night, as you practice this quiet return, you begin to carry more peace into your sleep. You wake up with more clarity. Not because everything is perfect, but because you remembered who you are. And that quiet knowing, that inner stillness, becomes your strength. So the next time you're lying there, tempted to fill the silence with noise, try this instead. Return to yourself. Not through thinking, through presence, through stillness, through breath. The mind may try to wander. That's natural. Just keep returning gently, again and again. Because every time you do, you're not just falling asleep. You're coming home. There is something about the night that brings our emotions closer to the surface. When the noise of the day fades, what we've buried starts to rise. Feelings we didn't want to face, words we didn't say, questions we didn't answer. And too often, we try to push it all back down again. We distract ourselves with screens, noise, or endless thinking, hoping to fall asleep before we feel too much. But the truth is, before bed, one of the most powerful things you can do is to express what's inside, not suppress it. Suppressing emotions doesn't make them disappear. It simply stores them deeper in the body, where they quietly shape our tension, our restlessness, even our dreams. We go to bed feeling heavy without knowing why. We wake up exhausted, like we never truly rested. That's because what we don't release, we carry. And what we carry, we eventually become. That's why before sleep, even just a few minutes of honest emotional expression can bring more peace than hours of trying to escape your feelings. But this isn't about venting endlessly or drowning in drama. It's about simple honesty. It's about giving yourself permission to feel, to speak, to let the inside come to the surface, gently, safely, without judgment. Most people were never taught how to do this. We're told to stay strong, move on, or get over it. But real strength doesn't come from holding everything in. It comes from meeting your emotions with courage. It comes from saying to yourself, What I feel matters. It has the right to exist. Before bed, find a small moment to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And then listen. Not with the mind, but with awareness. Maybe it's sadness. Maybe it's frustration, joy, confusion, gratitude, or fear. Don't label it as good or bad. Just name it. That simple act of naming softens the tension. It tells your nervous system, you're safe now. You don't have to fight this. And if the feeling is too complex for words, that's okay too. You can express it through breath, through writing, through a quiet whisper into the darkness. You can place a hand on your chest and simply say, I feel this. No one else needs to hear it. It's not a performance, it's a release. And that release is not weakness, it's medicine. Some people find comfort in journaling, writing down what you're feeling, without editing or correcting yourself. Letting the thoughts come out raw, imperfect, and real. Others might find healing in prayer, or in simply speaking aloud to themselves. Even if no one's listening, the act of voicing what you feel can lift the weight off your heart. It's like unclenching a fist you didn't know you were holding. What happens when we do this regularly is that we begin to trust ourselves more. We stop being afraid of our own emotional landscape. We become less reactive during the day and more peaceful at night. Because we're not bottling things up until they explode. We're letting the pressure release gently, moment by moment. And over time, this builds emotional intelligence. You start to notice your patterns. You become more patient with yourself, more understanding of others. You're no longer controlled by the emotions you once avoided. Instead, you're guided by the clarity that comes from feeling them fully. And yes, there will be nights when it's not easy. When the feeling is big and the words are messy. But that's okay too. The point is not perfection. The point is connection. When you allow yourself to express instead of suppress, you're telling yourself you matter. Your inner world matters. Your pain, your joy, your confusion. It all has a place here. That's how you stop feeling like a stranger to yourself. Loneliness often deepens when we keep everything inside. We think no one understands us, but sometimes we haven't even tried to understand ourselves. The simple act of expression bridges that gap. It brings light to the hidden parts. And in that light, we remember that we're not as lost as we thought. We're just learning how to listen. So before you sleep tonight, try not to run from what you feel. Sit with it. Speak it. Write it. Breathe through it. Let your emotions have their moment. Not to control you, but to move through you. Because what you express, you release. And what you release no longer weighs you down. There's a moment each night, just after we've finished everything we needed to do, just before we decide to sleep, where we make a quiet choice. Some of us reach for our phones. We scroll, we click, we consume. Others turn on the TV, play background noise, fill the silence however we can. And we tell ourselves it's just to unwind, to relax. But more often than not, what we're really doing is avoiding something. We're avoiding the quiet. We're avoiding the feeling of being alone. And in trying to escape loneliness, we sometimes end up deepening it. That's why, before bed, one of the most meaningful habits you can build is to choose connection, real connection, over scrolling. Not the kind of connection that's shallow or distracting, but something more intentional. Something that reminds you that even if you're physically alone, you're still part of something larger. That you still belong. The internet and social media have given us access to more people than ever before, but ironically, we feel more disconnected. Why? Because what we often get from our screens isn't connection, it's stimulation. Endless content, endless comparison, endless distraction. We look, but we don't really see. We react, but we don't really feel. And then we wonder why we close our eyes at night with a sense of emptiness that we can't quite explain. But imagine doing something different. Imagine that before bed, instead of reaching for noise, you reach for something meaningful. Maybe you write a message to someone you care about. Not a performance, not something long. Just a simple, hey, I was thinking of you today. Hope you're okay. That small act not only connects you to someone else, it reminds you of the love you're capable of giving. It pulls you out of your own head and into the world again. Or maybe you listen to a voice message someone sent you days ago, the one you didn't have time to open. Or you reread an old conversation that made you smile. Or maybe you read a few pages of a book that speaks to something real in you. Not just something entertaining, but something that stirs your soul a little. These moments, tiny as they seem, carry weight. They bring you back to your heart. And if there's no one to reach out to right now, if your contacts feel silent, or your room feels too quiet, then connect inward. Write a letter to someone you miss, even if you never send it. Say a prayer, even if you're not sure who's listening. Speak kindly to yourself in the mirror, just for a moment. Remind yourself, I'm here. I made it through the day. And I'm not giving up on myself. Because that, too, is connection. The kind we often overlook. It's easy to chase connection through likes, comments, or replies. But the deeper kind, the kind that fills the soul, comes from presence. It comes from intention. And it often starts when we step away from the surface, level noise, and move toward what's real. There's nothing wrong with technology. It's not the phone that's the problem. It's how we use it. The habit of numbing ourselves before bed is a quiet form of disconnection. We don't even notice how it chips away at our peace. But when we make the choice, even once a week, to put the phone down and pick something meaningful up instead, we begin to shift. We begin to heal. We begin to remember what truly matters. It could be something as small as writing down 3 things you're grateful for. It could be thinking of one person you love and holding them in your thoughts for a few minutes. It could be looking out the window, watching the sky, and remembering that you're a part of something vast and beautiful. It doesn't have to be dramatic, but it has to be honest. That's where the magic lies, in the honest moments before sleep, where you choose connection over distraction. Loneliness isn't just about being without people, it's about feeling unseen. But when you take time each night to connect, to life, to others, or even to yourself, you remind your soul that it's not invisible. You show up even when no one else is watching. And that creates a quiet strength inside you that no screen can ever replace. So tonight, and every night you remember, make the simple choice: reach for meaning, not noise. Because connection doesn't always come to find us. We have to choose it.